do your due diligence. I can't stress how important it is to hold on to your money. A lot of times people talk about property and make it out like we all haven't worked hard. And I want to make it clear that I got a loan. A family friend gave me 50K. My appetite for risk is huge. I live in stress and chaos.
You're a crazy man.
The first business you open will eat you alive. I couldn't open my restaurant. My dad passed away. And then my mum had cancer. No, I was this close, man.
And we are back for another episode of the PBK podcast. Each and every week, we bring you a special guest. Now, normally we're super niche, property related, residential property, but we've decided to go outside of the comfort zone a little bit, bring in some more people because there is so many ways to make money. So today I am joined by Gabriel. How are you doing?
I'm good. Good afternoon. How you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Do you remember where we know each other from?
Yes, from Chizo's podcast. It's probably about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. I think it was just around the pandemic time.
Do you see why? That's because I was so young. You don't know where you know me from.
Okay.
So I'm Dayo's cousin, Devo Dayo.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
So I was going to like the
City Love
Departure
and all of
Lounge
those.
and City Love and all
right.
of that black and white from when I was like 16.
All
So all
right.
of those old school raves, that's where a lot of people, I remember you from back then.
Yeah, my memory's not the best.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
small world, but that's where it's from. But I wanted to get you on today
Mm-hmm.
because, like I said, you're doing some amazing stuff in
Thank you.
the commercial property space. Outside of probably having some of the funniest captions I see online on Instagram, you're really smashing it. So for those that maybe are not as familiar with you, can you kind of introduce yourself so we get to learn about your background?
Okay, so I was born in Nigeria. Okay, left there when I was 1. My mum decided that out of all the sunny places in Europe, that she would pick London for some reason to come and relocate. So I'll say thank you for that. Went to school, as everyone does, primary school. Didn't have the best primary school experience. I always ask an interesting question, and I always say, if you had to pick out of 2 things, would you rather your child was a bully or your child got bullied? What would you pick out of those 2? Would you rather your child was a bully or your child was getting bullied?
Probably that they're a bully.
It's deep. It's a very deep question.
You know.
So I got bullied in school.
Yeah.
You know, being that young Nigerian boy, coming into school, you know, my mum decided that she would put a bowl on my head and decide to cut my hair instead of going to the barbers because as far as she's concerned, she could learn how to fade, but she wasn't really good at fading. So I'd go to school, you know, with one of those, what's that guy, Wesley Snipes trims.
Yeah.
So school was interesting. So I got bullied in school. That was in primary school. Then got to secondary school. Decided that I was going to join the bullies, had a fight with one of them. Somehow I won, don't know how. So went through secondary school, got to year 11, got kicked out of secondary school, could only go to do my exams. Went to college, went to 3 colleges because I just... Funny thing is I wasn't naughty, but I had naughty friends.
I think with coming from like an African household, a lot of the time, what I find is within that culture,
Yeah.
we're cheeky but not disrespectful.
Yeah.
So like teachers will say, Gabriel, I like him, but he doesn't focus, or but he's with the wrong people, because it's entrenching us to be good.
Yeah.
But they're naturally friends when you're at that age. You want to do that old saying of, if your friends are going to jump off the cliff, would you?
Are you going to jump off too?
And you're like, well, mum, if it's cool, like we're all doing it.
I think my thing was that my humor and my misbehavior was my defense mechanism for the lack that we had or I had. So for instance, I would make fun of the hole in my trousers, or I'd make fun about my plimsolls before you could. So I was a class clown to sort of put a veil over my insecurities and the problems. That's why I was naughty.
Doing like the Eminem 8 Mile.
Yeah,
like, I'm going to get it before you get it, to take the sting out of any potential
So I ended
jab.
up going to 3 colleges. I went to 3 universities, finally graduated with a Mickey Mouse degree in business management and marketing. And I call those Mickey Mouse degrees because I don't believe you need to go to university to learn business or marketing. Went from there. I did had a lot of jobs. I've worked in Phones for You, Carphone Warehouse, Zara, Marks and Spencer's.
I worked in Phones for You as well.
Okay, yeah, I worked there. I worked as a cleaner in my college. I've done steel work. I've almost done every job you can think of. Okay. My mum had a pupil referral unit. So I used to work with kids that got kicked out of secondary school. That was around 2005. Started selling cars around 2007. And the funny thing is that I always say that cars was my selling drugs, if that makes sense. So a lot of the times when you're growing up, we always try to find role models, you know, and my role model was my sisters ex-partner. This was years ago. And he used to always drive Golf GTIs, the Matchbox ones like back in the day. And I used to ask him like, how did you get this car? And he was like, oh, I go auction and buy cars and sell them. So he took me to auction. Now, if he was a drug dealer or a fraudster, that would have been me, because that's who I would have latched onto. And it's very important that I always say representation is key. So it's good that you've got podcasts like this so that the younger lot can see someone who looks like them, who's come from the same background, and they're like, hold on, how is Kaz doing this? He bleeds like me. He's got a black skin like me. How is he doing it? And that's why I think it's so important that you've got platforms like this, which sort of highlight that, you know, ordinary people can also do these kind of things. So yeah, so I went from university, went into selling cars, and then I started doing events. And I always say that events was my mixtape. And why I say that is that I always say that before you plunge your feet into do any business, I always say get your feet wet. So there's a reason why artists do mixtapes or EPs, to kind of garner interest and see where they're standing with things. So I started doing events. And whenever you're doing events, you find out there are two things you typically have to pay for, either a higher fee or a bar spend. So I used to go for the bar spend route. So that means the owner will say to you, or the manager would say, look, we need £3,000 spent behind this bar and you can have this night for free. Now, if you don't hit that bar spend, you've got to make up the shortfall, meaning that if you hit 2K, you've got to give them £1,000. So I started doing events and people were coming to these events. And I said to myself, if I can bring 400 people to someone else's venue, surely if I get my own venue, I can bring 400 people there and I can avoid all of this headache. And there's a lot of red tape when it comes to doing events. You know, I learned the hard way that your price is not the other person's price. And I'm not going to refer to what demographic that is, but there are different prices for different demographics. Okay. So I used to get one of my friends from a certain demographic to go and do viewings for venues. And I realized that, you know, that venue, all of a sudden, the bar spend isn't 5K, but it's 2K. And I'm like, So I always say that there are certain ways that we are marginalized that you don't even know. For instance, you're in property. Yeah. Okay. And I'm not saying you've experienced adversity when it goes to looking for deals, but you find that...
Like, if you know why I drive the car I drive, it's because having to explain I actually have the money to buy this property and go through the rigmarole of, no, I've been doing this for a while, no, here's... Rather than just, oh, can we see a proof of funds? It's like, oh no, can I see X amount of bank statements? If you pull up in a bright orange car that's pretty nice, you get that, okay, you've
skipped all of those hurdles.
Yeah, so sometimes it's just means to an end stuff. So I completely understand.
And I've learned the hard way that you probably don't even know how many deals you've missed out on just because of who you are. And I've learned the hard way, even when it comes to the commercial units that I take on. There are times that I've seen a unit go on just now, like it's like you can go on Rightmove, commercial, Zoopla commercial, whatever you use, and you can see that it's just been put on, just added. I'm speaking to them and maybe they can hear the ebonics in my tone. They're like, oh yeah, we've had a few viewings, they already had offers. And I'm like, when did this thing go on? And I'm like, sometimes people put things on just for the formality. Yeah. But I've gone on viewings where I know that I've been the first person to view, where the agent has told me I'm the first. And then I'm like, yeah, I want it, I'll take it. They're like, oh yeah, are you ready to pay the asking price? I'm like, yeah, I'm ready for it. Yeah, I'm ready. They're like, okay, we're just going to take a few more viewings. I'm like, is this what you want for it? Yeah. Okay, this is the proof of funds. Here's my reference. I've got like they call it like a landlord pack. Yeah. So I've already got my pack, which has everything in there. It's got my references. So I send you the PDF. Everything's in there. So I said like, and I've seen these things where they've waited maybe, the place is still up for sale for 3 months later, 4 months later. I'm like,
yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons why I think having platforms and podcasts and building like our own ecosystem within the community is very important, because there are a lot of deals that don't even see the light of day because they stay in-house.
In circle,
And there are stuff that unfortunately, for whatever reason, you don't necessarily get access to. Your offering isn't taken, as seriously, which is why I think just building a network of people within similar types of complementary industries is really important in terms of elevating collectively.
Yeah, and so it's one of those things where I've said that it's a difficult conversation when it comes to entry or points of entry. And I always say that it's important for us to not gatekeep because they gatekeep. Whoever they are, they do it. So fast forward, I decided from doing events that I'm going to try and get my own commercial space. So 2015, I got my first one, which was in Birmingham. So people ask, why did you go to Birmingham?
I was going to preempt my questions.
I used to do events in Birmingham. Okay. And I realized that I had a network up there, and it was
Did you study up there?
No, I didn't. Okay. I studied at London Met.
So how did you end up doing events in
So
Birmingham?
because my events were pretty known,
Yeah.
and where I was a bit of a menace on social media.
You know what? That was a time where it was, I forgot, you've got to remember timelines. That was a time where we would go, like, Leicester, road trip, Birmingham, road trip.
So I used to do events in Birmingham.
Okay.
And I partnered with someone up in Birmingham at the beginning when I opened that space. So I opened that in 2015. And the funny thing is, why I say representation is key is that when I first opened my place in Birmingham, I was the first in our community to do a cocktail bar, restaurant, private hire space. And off the back of that, so many people have opened them. And why I say representation is so important is because I'm not building aeroplanes. And I, not to undermine what you do, you're not building aeroplanes either. No, it's not easy, but
But I do say often that the fundamentals of the business are the same as any other business. It's just, there are things, and we say like barriers to entry in terms of capital or credit, but the fundamentals of making the business work are, can you buy for a price or agree a lease at a price, spend some money and increase the value to make a profit margin that you feel is worthwhile personal remuneration.
Yeah, and that's, I think, is so important that, once again, that you've got these platforms, so the younger lot or those who are not even younger, our age, can be like, hold on, if these brothers are doing it, why can't I do it? And I think I always have to mention that business is not for everybody. And I don't like the mantra or idea where everyone says, stop making your boss rich, start living out your boss's dreams. There are plenty of people I know in 9 to 5s who earn more money than me.
100%.
I know plenty of people.
And even when it's not just monetary, people that will personally be more successful in a 9 to 5 because
then I will.
They work better as a team than they do as a team leader, for example.
And it's not for everybody. And I always say that your peace of mind, in my opinion, should supersede everything. I always say that I was doing some mentoring with someone last week, and his reason for leaving the job is that he doesn't want to work for anybody anymore. I said, congratulations. Do you think you're going to leave your job and not work for anybody? I said, his point of entry, he wants to go into the service sort of business. I said, you're going to be working for your customers. Okay. This idea of not wanting to work for anybody, that I don't understand this.
Thank you.
You're going to work for your customers and they're worse than your boss.
No, can I just get around the floor? Because that whole idea of
it's mental.
Every customer becomes your boss because you have to keep every single person happy versus just the one person.
I learned that the hard way. So when I opened the restaurant in Birmingham, so on a Sunday, it wasn't very busy on Sundays. So I only used to have one bartender. So my bartender rang me on a Sunday morning saying, you can't make it. I said, what do you mean you can't make it? He said, I'm ill. I said, mate, just bring a tissue and some paracetamol. He goes, Gabriel, I'm ill. I'm not coming in. So there was no bartender. So I came in. Now, I don't know how to bartend to do cocktails. I can do a spirit mixer. I can do an excellent brandy and coke. But when you want me to do a mojito or a strawberry daiquiri, I know I'm butchering the names. I can't do it. So a lady comes in and she goes to me, she'd like a Cosmopolitan, I think it was. I said, unfortunately, we're not doing cocktails today. She said, just 1 second. So she said, follow me. I said, where are you going? So she walked me outside my shop, my restaurant. She goes, Sion Cocktail Bar and Dining. Cocktails.
How do you respond to that?
Lady,
she's right.
Yes.
But that's very cheeky.
Yes. And I don't want to work for anybody anymore. I'm the boss.
Yeah.
I'm the boss. The customer came and showed me about myself. She said, Sion Cocktail. So you don't do cocktails? I said, no, my staff isn't in. She goes, who's the owner? I said, I am. She goes, so as the owner, do you not feel you should have learned maybe something in your business how to do it? I said, so that day, the following week when we opened on Wednesday, I started learning how to make cocktails. So now whenever there was a shortfall in the business, I started making cocktails. So fast forward 2015, I went to open my next one in Dulwich, and that was meant to open Mother's Day 2020. So I don't know if you're aware what happened around April, May 2020.
Yeah.
What was that?
Wait, that's like COVID, right?
COVID kicked in. So imagine the day I'm meant to open, I get Boris comes on TV, wherever it was, telling us we can't open. So literally, I'd thrown all my money. So I'm a huge risk taker, and I don't advise people to do that all the time. But I do business on the breadline. I mean, there's times when I've had like nothing, as in literally. And sometimes people will say they're broke and they've got a car, they've got kettles. No. I'm talking.
We've had a conversation about this. I said, you're a crazy man.
Yeah.
I know some crazy men, but you said, and I think, but when I say that, there's nothing wrong with being crazy.
I'm crazy.
If you understand you're crazy. So like, if you understand that I'm perfectly willing to take this level of risk for this level of rewards, that's fine. My issue is when people don't actually put a value towards the level of risk they're taking and they don't value, okay, if I'm going to take this level of risk, my reward needs to be up here.
Yeah.
You can't be taking this level of risk.
Oh no, my risk and reward is always, it always makes sense.
Those things make sense.
I'm telling you that I've got a good network of people around me. And the thing about it is that my credit, and I always say that my credit is everything. Credit with your reference agencies and credit amongst my people. So there's times when I've opened businesses and I've gone broke and my friends have given me 20 bags, 10 bags. Like I've got, and it's so important to have circles of people around you who can vouch for you. Do you know what I mean? Because there's friends around me now, if I ask them for 50 bags, they give it to me because they know that I'm good for it. And that's why I say it's very important to have good relations. So COVID happened and I couldn't open my restaurant and I was broke. So I went and bought a van. I think I paid about $2,000 for it, a Renault Master. Then I started doing deliveries. One of my friends has a contract for HelloFresh and he brought me in and allowed me to do that. And I always say thank you to him because during that pandemic, funny thing is my dad passed away 2 months after lockdown. So imagine I couldn't open my restaurant. My dad passed away and then my mum had cancer around that time. So one of the main reasons that I moved back from Birmingham to London is because I was going back and forward every Monday to take my mum to chemo. So it just became too much traveling and her appointments were like 8, 9 in the morning.
And I guess you just want to be closer, outside of even just the trip, you just want to be around.
So I think what COVID taught me was how resilient I can be because I was this close, man. I was like, you know, when you're like, when you scream in the mirror, I was that close, like restaurants shut, dad passed away and mum's got cancer. I said, yeah, this is a lot. So during the pandemic, doing van driving, blah, 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 we opened back up again. So fast forward to May 2022, I took the keys for a place in Angel. That's another commercial unit. And there's a restaurant in there now. And then fast forward, that opened. And
then when you say you took the keys with that one,
yes,
what was the modeling for that one? Because obviously first one, name on the door, Sion Lounge.
Yes, so I learned from doing Sion that I think everyone needs to know what they're good at. Now, I always say that if you're going to take the adulation and praise, you got to take the criticism. A lot of times people want the praise, but don't want the negative side to it. Now, when you open a business, I would say that you need to be the least important person in your business, meaning that your business should be able to run without you. If your business cannot run without you, you don't have a business. Now, this is my philosophy. Now, somebody else might say, no, you still got a business. I just think you're a glorified worker. Nothing wrong with that. But I've got to the point where if you can't scale your business to the point that you're not needed, you still have a business, but in my opinion, you don't have a business. That's just my opinion. And I've learned that when you make your business too personal, so with Sion London, people would message me saying, hey, G, I'm coming to your restaurant, you're going to be there. And when I say no, they don't come. Your business shouldn't run like that. Your business should be able to run to the point that people are not going there for you. Biggest problem with the Gordon Ramsay restaurants, a lot of them shut down. Jamie Oliver's, a lot of them shut down. You're calling your business Jamie Oliver's. Now, as dumb as it sounds, I want to see Jamie Oliver.
Yeah, like Salt Bay.
Yeah, biggest problem.
You're not doing this.
I want to see and you're not seeing it. So a lot of these places, business becomes too personal, and I don't believe business should be personal. I don't believe it is, because it's hard to scale something when it's you. You know, now, unless you can open so many branches and people don't care whether you're there or not, that's fine. But I don't believe that business should be, I don't believe your business should be able to run where you have to always be there. So I learned from Sion that I'm no longer doing this. So what I then did is I've stripped everything back now. And so the units that I've got now in the restaurants in there, I don't own them or run them. No one knows I'm attached to them. They just run themselves. Now, I have an equity share in them. So I'm still making money from them, but no one knows I'm involved. One, I'm not very good. My poker face isn't the best. So there's times I'll be in a restaurant. I'll give an example. Someone said to me once, can you take the halal out of the steak? I said, I thought they were joking. I said,
wait, repeat that, sorry.
They said, can you take the halal out of the steak? So I looked at now, remember, I forget that. So for instance, you might talk about residential property and I might ask you a question. You might be like, is this guy mad? Because you know it. Yeah. It's like, what's this guy like? We ask me dumb questions. No, this person wasn't being funny. Yeah. This person didn't know that halal is not a seasoning or it's not something you can remove from the meat. Yeah. Like it's just the way it's blessed and the way the meat is slaughtered. Like I said, what do you mean? She goes, oh, I just don't want the halal. I said, okay. A customer once said to me, she booked a table for 7 people. Now, a table of 7 is technically a table of 8 because if you notice, you've got a table of 1 has 1 on each side, which means 7 is 8. So you can always bring one more person because that chair is just going to be free. I told her, no problem. You can bring someone else. She then messaged me back about an hour later saying, oh, I've got another friend who wants to come. Can I invite them? I said, no, we're fully booked. She then sent me a text saying, oh, can I bring a chair? I'm going to show you these messages. So you know after you finish this, I'm going to show you the message so you know I'm not bluffing.
Okay.
The girl said she wants to bring a chair from home to the restaurant.
And was it, in terms of...
Where'd you go from there?
What that they did for you though, was that a moment that said you don't want to be customer facing?
Yeah, it's not for me. It's not for me.
You just wanted to focus on business to business?
Yes. It's not for me because my poker face, I don't know how to look at you like you're not, like, I don't know how to do it. And when you're in that business, you can't be like that because if someone asks you a question, sometimes they're being funny. Like someone ordered a well done steak once and said, oh, can I have it medium well instead? And I said, what do you mean? She was, oh, like, I've seen my friend's steak and it doesn't seem like it's injured. It's not bleeding. So I want it like that. I said, but you've ordered it. It's well done. Yeah, just make it medium well. How do you make a well done steak meat? I said, what do you do?
The funny thing is though, and I think this is what's really interesting about business is that some people thrive in customer service. Like they're amazing at it. Like their skill set is to be personable, to solve problems. And I think in business, I think, although you touched on the fact early on when we spoke about your degrees and you said you didn't find it that valuable. I think one thing that I found from even going back to sort of GCSE and, you know, really early on, that sort of school business studies was that those core concepts really help to underpin, so understanding sort of personal analysis in terms of who you are and how you work and just maximizing your strengths. Because if you're blessed with something, to be able to be really intricate and, you know, have a great attention to detail when it comes to numbers, use that because it's going to make you more efficient. You can specialize. If you're great with people, use that. So you've realized that, you know, the customer service side, the customer
sales, I'm great at. See, sales, that's my thing. Sales and finding these properties and knowing the numbers, fantastic at it. But when it comes to customers, I'm not great at it. Like if I feel someone's trying me, so as a manager, you've got to put a poker face on and just accept, okay, no problem. I'm really sorry about that. I understand. I'm really sorry. I take it personal. You know, this is my restaurant. You know, it's mine. So when you come into this restaurant to try me, I don't see it as business. You're trying me. Like you're personally coming to me. A customer will leave a review about something. So let's say, now I know of you. I'd say we're associates. I wouldn't call you my friend. And I don't say it in a, like, I don't take friend lightly. You're associates. If I saw you in the street, someone's rushing you, I'll step in. I might not, if they're too strong, I might leave you to get rushed. But I'll try and like, allow him. But I'm not getting too involved. Now imagine this. Imagine you've got a restaurant and I come to your restaurant. And let's say I leave a review and say the food was great, but it took an hour for the food. So if you're going there, go to Morley's first. You know it's me that left the review. And you see me out the following day. Yeah. Are you going to say anything to me about the review? Bearing in mind, look at our relationship. I've got your number.
Yeah. No, if we know each other, then I'm going to say, like, yeah, you could have just said that to me. Like, I would have appreciated the feedback because I'm assuming you want me to do better.
And my reply back to you is, did I lie though? The food was good, and it was good, but I waited an hour. So I said, go Morley's first.
And I think, like, in my mind, I would have just said, but you've got my number. Like, you've got my number.
What did they do wrong?
But what they did wrong was, if you was doing it for me, you would have told me. By you putting it out there, that's not for me, that's for you. So I'd say you're being selfish.
Yeah, but the thing is that if it was a good review and there was nothing negative there, would you have said them to message you?
No, because then it's for me as well. Because it's the impact. Because I think one thing I always say to people is you've got to be just as sure as whatever you say or whatever you write. You've got to be you have to be just as aware as how that makes people feel versus what you meant. And they may have meant it in a non-combative way. But if it has that impact, they also have to be aware of you can't just be responsible for what you meant. If I'm offended, I'm offended.
But why are you offended? Was it the truth?
It was the truth. But if we have a relationship, for you to go outside of the platform, we have a way, we don't communicate through Google or through whatever, Google reviews. So that's not our normal way of communication. So for you to take it outside of that, either you're not confident enough to tell me, which may just be your personality.
Would it be fair you've taken it personal now? And it's not business anymore?
Yeah, like, because business is personal. If you put your name on the door.
Exactly, that's what I've learned, going back to you now. I'm not making business personal anymore, because it's not good for me. Some people can deal with that. I can't deal with it. I take it personal. If you know me or know of me, come to my space and then say, oh, the food was great, but go to Morley's first because it took an hour. You're cheeky.
But it's not, I would take that personal. I think like I said, going back to understanding you, like I know that I will take things personal.
Yeah.
So I am very much business orientated. So if you're attacking the business, I'm okay with that because it's very much black and white.
Yeah.
If you're attacking the personality or who you are, it's a lot easier to take that personal because you're like, well, how do you take metrics and quantify that? I can't defend myself because it's how you feel.
Yeah, you can't. And that's where I just learned that it's not for me. So I've just now decided that my skill is getting the properties, renovating them, doing all the infrastructure for someone who wants a restaurant or a bar or a private hire space and just giving them the keys and take an equity share. And funny thing is I put up a story today and I said, would you rather have 10% of 10 businesses that are turning over a profit of 100K each, or would you rather own your own business which turns over 100K a year? So would you rather have 10 businesses?
For me personally, I would, because the number is the same in terms of the profit, but you don't have all your eggs in one basket. And from my background of diversification, it means that if there's, an accident and something loses its license or there's a health and safety issue, or there's anything happens, or an area really goes downhill, or there's natural disaster, you've effectively mitigated your risk by not having it all in one basket. And also because you don't run it entirely, you then hopefully can focus on other things in terms of your specialization of acquisition.
And that's the thing about business and ownership. And I always say that. So what I've learned with what I do, and I can only talk for myself, is that I've learned the hard way. And if you can't scale your business, and once again, I don't believe you've got a business. And what I mean by that is this. So when I first had Birmingham, for instance, when you open a small business, and I can't talk for everyone, but in hospitality specifically, you're going to lose your life because the margins are so tight that hiring a manager that's going to maybe cost you $3,000 a month could be the difference between you making maybe 5K a month or making only 2K a month. And it's not worth it, in my opinion, to be making 2K a month. Just get a day job.
I don't know if it actually is, but I actually started in bars basically. I had a shisha lounge, shisha and cocktail lounge.
Oh, serious?
Again, I actually had an instance of shisha and cocktail lounge on the door. They weren't as blunt as your customer, but we're like, you want to get a cocktail? I said, well, no one's here yet. So we got like J2O, we got I don't even drink. I don't even know the names of the alcohol. So when they're asking me about stuff, I'm just like, point to what's behind me. But I had that experience, and that's how I actually ended up going the other way, getting into residential property, because the commercial space that I had, I didn't have a lease. I had a license to trade. So effectively could have lost it at any point in time, and it had loads of potential, but couldn't spend the money on it to make it where it could be. But also, as you touched on, was there every day, because whilst it was the markups on shisha are super high, you still had to be there. It's a cash business a lot of the time. So in terms of quality control and oversight, you've got to be there. And even in terms of the costing of employing higher level staff,
very high,
to get out of there. And which is why I transitioned again into, okay, this was fun. It made good money, but longevity wise, there wasn't a clear pathway of how do you scale this.
I think I always say that so one of my biggest mantras when it comes to business, I've got a business I'm starting up. So friends, I do consultancy, I don't advertise, people just message me for it. So it's going to be called WBF Group, which is working back to front. And I always say that. So a lot of times people come to me for consultancy and I say, okay, how much you want to make? People don't know the answer to that question. The next time someone comes to you and says, oh, they want to buy a property or something, just say, okay, what do you want to make from it?
No, that's literally my go-to things. When people say I want to get into property, my thing before even how much do you want to make? What do you want? Do you want to build assets or do you want cash flow?
They don't know. They can't tell you.
Then after, most people's thing is always, I want both. Right?
You can't do both.
But then
you can, but you can't.
But not efficiently. Because the deal that's really good for increasing value, the yields are probably not going to be great because of the area. The ones that have great yields, you're probably not going to have that same level of capital appreciation. And
now, quick one, for those who don't know yields, because a lot of people might be following this, watching this podcast, so they might not be familiar with that. What is yield?
So a yield is effectively your return on like the value of the property versus the rental income, and then you'll get a percentage yield. So how much money you make in relation to the value of the asset effectively.
So is that basically, so let's say your mortgage is maybe say 1.5 a month, and let's say you're getting a return of 2K. So you're getting a £500 profit. So is that technically what the yield is, or how does it?
So when we look at yield, and because not everybody has a mortgage.
Okay,
so
cool.
But when we look at yield, so that's why we kind of look at, okay, you can either look at a net yield in terms of how much you're making profit wise. So if, for example, you're making £500 profit and per month, so you're making £6,000 a year. Probably is worth £100,000, like a 6% yield.
Okay, I get what you mean now. Okay, yeah.
But then again, depends on if you actually have a mortgage, value of property, etc. But effectively, that's where you're.
Okay. So I think for me, it's one of those things where, so I always say that when we had that conversation that time at the event, and was talking about.
That's actually why. Sorry, for those who don't know,
Yeah.
running each other at an event, obviously everyone else is enjoying themselves.
Yeah.
Great event, but we're kind of like, look, we've been outside for a long time.
Yeah.
We've been around and we're kind of just chilling, catching up. And the conversation came off the back of why commercial property as opposed to residential, which is where this conversation stemmed from.
Now, I've learned now that, so for instance, my ROI, return on investment, is what's the most important thing to me. Whether you're doing stock, shares, S&P and 500, whatever it is, I think the most important thing to anyone should be the return on investment. When am I going to get my money back, and when will I start making profit? Now, as I said, I don't know the commercial game. So I've got friends who do commercial property and are doing very well in it, but I don't know it. So I've ended up going the commercial route. Now,
don't know the residential game.
So I've got friends who do the residential game and I do the commercial game.
Yeah.
So for instance, now I was going to buy a flat in Ghana. So I went to Ghana around January, and the flat was basically a 1-bed flat, and they wanted £120,000 for it. Yeah. Now, when I calculated what I would be getting back as a rental income from that place, if I didn't Airbnb it, because there's so many different ways to get a rental income. So I was just going to rent it out to one person, okay, for maybe 6 months or a year. And it worked out that I would probably get about £1,300 a month. Now, with those flats in Ghana, how you buy them typically is that you pay it over 2 or 3 years because it's off plan. So you might pay, so if it's 120, you might pay 30K in 1 year, 30K the next year. If it's 4 years, and 30 to make it 30 times 4, 120. I sat there and I said, now I'm going to spend 120K on this flat, okay? I'm going to get maybe £1,400 a month from there. That's roughly what? 10%, just over 10% yield with the math you're saying.
Yeah.
Now, I can go and get a commercial space in England, maybe spend 70K, and I can do 100% in that in 1 year. I can get my money back in 1 year. Now, I pulled out of the deal because now most of my friends are doing it. Now, they don't know what to do with their money. And I always say that when it comes to certain things, if you've got 100 bags, 200 bags lying down and you can go and get 10% of something, by all means go and do it. But I'm in a commercial space. So I gave this guy 3.5 grand as a deposit, as a holding fee or some kind of, to start the thing, you've got to give them like 3K. I pulled out of it because I said, I'm not going to give, and this is just me. So this is just one deal. So I'm not talking about the whole of the property world. But I pulled out saying, look, I can dump 100K in a commercial unit and get like £8,000 a month profit. Why am I going to do that on a...
So let's talk about what your deal actually looks like. So when you talk about 100K,
yes,
I think we kind of skipped a little bit. So when you're now going to find these new opportunities, what makes up that 100K when you're looking at these?
So I'll give an example. So let me use the place I got in 2023. I got in the Zone 1 area. I don't like mentioning too much the area because people clock what the restaurant is. So I try to separate from it. So that place, it was a lease. Okay, so I took a 25-year lease on that place. So a commercial lease is similar to getting a flat lease. It's just a lease. Okay, so it's a £40,000 per annum lease. So you've got to put typically 3 months rent, 3 months deposit. So I gave them 20 bags. So that was 20K to get the keys. Then you've got your solicitor fees. My solicitor's in Birmingham, so I pay him £12.50. Then you've got typically your stamp duty. There's so many other kind of things you pay. So let's just say all in it's 25K to get the keys. Okay. To do the renovation for that place, it cost me roughly about, quite a lot. That place cost me about 120K.
Commercial renovation. You know what? I've had a few friends that is I've invested in. Now the commercial renovation space will eat your money. It's not a joke. Like it will very quickly.
That was about 120. So call that place 150 to do up. Now, obviously, there's a restaurant inside that space, and I've got an equity share in that space. And I would say that with that space, if I really wanted to do it properly and have a full ownership and whatever in it, you could easily collect 16, 17 bags a month. Easily. Now, that's the commercial space. Now, there's different ways to do things. Somebody might just buy the commercial unit. You might be an owner-occupier, or you might be someone who's going to let it out. There's different ways to skin a cat. But my formula, for instance, like I've got a space with another business partner in East London, okay? That space cost about 70 bags to do up. So that's 70 bags, including getting the key and to be able to open and operate. Easy, that place does. Like it does 100% ROI, which means you get your money back in 1 year. And this is where I always say to people, it depends whether you want your money on the front end or on the back end.
And I think that's it. And I think like one of the reasons why I want to get more people, obviously you're directly in, you know, in property, but in a commercial space, but more people in different businesses, because there is so many ways to make money.
Oh yeah, so many different ways.
And the actual fact is, a lot of the biggest landlords, landowners in the UK actually make their money from other businesses, which they then exit to put into property. Now, we speak about a lot of people that do property full time and do amazing things in that space. But I think if you are business minded, you're always going to get a higher return. You're generally going to get a higher return on investment, because you're putting in your time and doing through, even though you've stepped away from running the day-to-day element of the business or putting your name on the door, there's still a business behind it, whether that be taking it from conception as a blank canvas all the way out to something that can functionally work. You're basically taking the headache out.
I'll give you an example. One of my mates owns a property, as in he's got the freehold to it. He's allowed his friends to do Airbnb. So he bought the property 5 years ago. Imagine this. When they both calculated what they had both made profit-wise from this business separately, the Airbnb guy had made more than the guy who owned the property.
Of course. And it's just down to...
So sometimes it's not all... owning is important.
I think the thing with ownership is obviously, and again, it depends on attitudes towards risk. It depends on the time you've got available. It depends on what you're good at. Because let's say, for example, you take the Airbnb space. You have to deal with potentially... You know, we hear all the Airbnb horror stories, people renting out for prostitution, people doing parties, people just moving in and saying, actually, I live here now, and you've now got somebody that you can't remove. So you have all of those extra risks. Whereas for your friend that owned it, they're like, look, pay me. Our agreement is you pay me. Wherever your tenants are, if the place is full, if COVID happens, I get paid regardless. And that's the agreement we've got in place. And I think it's just understanding there's money to be made everywhere. There's going to be different levels of risks. There's going to be different levels of expertise. And how can you use whatever is most favorable to you based on your circumstance to make sure that you can make money in a way that makes sense for you?
Yeah. And that's why I think there's so many ways to skin a cat. And I would say there's no wrong way of doing business as long as you're making a return and you're happy with it.
How do you think you were able, because for a lot of people...
I forgot one important thing. I need to mention, I got a loan. Because, for instance, a lot of times people talk about property and talk about this and that and they make it out like we all haven't worked hard. And I want to make it clear that when I took Birmingham over, a family friend gave me 50K. I had some of my own money. So someone might be asking, how did you start your journey? I got a loan and it wasn't a business loan. It was a loan from a family friend. And to open the business in Dulwich, I took out a loan from a business. I took out a personal loan with a business loan. To open the other space in Zone 1. So I take out loans. So just in case someone's wondering, how did this guy make his money? I didn't make it from doing road. There's nothing, don't get me wrong. People have done crime. I've got friends who have done bad things, but I got my money from loans. Just so that it's very clear that it wasn't a case of where someone says, do 80 hours a week. We've all worked. And don't get me wrong. If you're in a position where you're struggling, by all means, try and maximize every single minute of the day to make money and make sure you have rest. You don't need sleep. Business is nonsense. You need sleep to function. So please sleep. Like, please, but sorry.
I was just going to say that. So actually, no, even in regards to what you just said, I think that's very important because particularly being, well, you're realistically a first / almost second generation migrant, but there's a lot of an attitude towards debt, that like debt is a bad thing. Never borrow money, only spend the money that you already have.
Please borrow.
But borrow obviously carefully, borrow efficiently, borrow at a reasonable rate of interest. But, you know, borrowing is what allows you to scale. When we look at property, the only reason people scale in property is they leverage. They put down, when you buy your first home with a 10% deposit, you get an asset that's worth 10 times that. If that goes up by 10%, the return on your investment is great because you've leveraged. I think there's nothing wrong with borrowing. And also for those that are looking to start a business, whether that be in property or any other case, don't think to yourself there isn't money around. Like
there is.
You mentioned your uncle, but like you'll be surprised how much money there is in your circle. And you mentioned earlier as well your own track records, like your own credit score.
I've always paid always paid money back.
You working with integrity, they're the people that are going to know you best. They're the people that are going to believe in you. So before they believe in the idea, they're going to say, "No, Gabriel works hard. Gabriel knows his business."
And you know what's funny? That's why my family friend gave me the money. So that time I was selling cars and doing events, and my family friend saw how diligent I was and how hard I worked, and that's why he gave me that 50K to open the first space. And I always make a point of being happy and grateful. And I mention that because a lot of times people act like the reason why people are not in certain positions because they don't work hard. We've all worked hard. And don't get me wrong, when I did Birmingham and when I was doing Dulwich, I was doing 80, 90 hour weeks. And the only reason why I can kind of relax a bit now is because I've put in that for 5-6 years. Like I've done hours. And sometimes people don't want to put in the graft. And to anybody who wants to open a restaurant or private hire space or any kind of business, the first business you open will eat you alive. And if you're not ready to put that graft in for your first business, and I'm talking hospitality, or even anything, whether it's a salon, anything where you're the main person, this idea of that you don't want to work for somebody, I don't want to work anymore. Clap for yourself. You'll see what happens. You're gonna meet the end bison of working.
Yeah. No, it's definitely it's a good advice for someone in terms of just preparing you for what business actually takes. So you've obviously started to open these spaces, and now that we've explained it, it's very much a case of obviously you've taken on the initial step. So you've taken on the initial risk of going to get the lease, of using your expertise to get it, and then actually beyond that, not just saying, oh, let me get the lease and then let me just sublease it there. You've added value by investing your own money.
I do the whole infrastructure.
Turn it into almost like a turnkey product that's good to go.
Yeah, I do everything. So I get them derelict. As in, I always get them in an abandoned condition. I do them up fully. I get the car terminals done. I get the EPOS system in. I do everything to the point where interior designing, I do it to the point where I give you the key and you can run your business. So the hardest part is people don't want to take the risk. What I'm doing is not rocket science, but people don't want that risk. So I can look at something that doesn't look pretty and I'd be like, I can make this look good. The same with what you probably do with residential properties that you buy. And then you've kind of learned how you can turn a 1-bed to a 2-bed. Whereas somebody might be like, how are you going to put the toilet in there? Where are you going to put but you've somehow in your head have designed that I can do the whole way that way. I can put this that way. I can do you know what I mean? So I just make sure that it's the risk and the vision that people don't have. And I've got that. And there's your key.
And so that's how, obviously, because you've provided a finished product and you've gone through a lot of the hard work, you're able to position yourself where you can ask for equity. Because most people don't want to give away equity. Most people just want to say, look, well, in property we call it debt, but they would just say, look, I just want to pay a rent, pay my market rent, maybe pay a premium for the fact that it's a going concern. But, you've been able to position equity. What I would say is, as a question towards risk,
yes,
what is it like? How do you insulate yourself from them being able to run the business effectively when you're basically a silent partner?
So how I do it is this. So I always make sure, first of all, so obviously they pay me a rent deposit, first of all. So I've got a rent deposit from them. And second, I always make sure that whatever lease I take on, it's so cheap that worst case scenario, I can always rent that place out with my eyes closed. So one of the places I've got, for instance, the typical rent for that place should be roughly about 7K a month. I've got it for 4K a month. So the gap between the 4 and 7 is so cheap that even if they decided the business not working, they've got to go, I can get someone in there in seconds. So how I mitigate my risk is that. But once again, with business, in the same way, you might have a tenant in your property. There's no guarantee they're going to pay your rent. There's nothing.
No. And that's why it's like multiple exit strategies when it comes to, okay, best case scenario, I've maybe agreed, an equity share or X, Y, or Z. If that fails, then I've got this where we can rent it back out and I still make this margin. Even if there was an issue with licensing, for example, for alcohol, I still know that a coffee shop would take it. And so you have best and worst case. But
and also, I only partner with people who I know have a track record. So for instance, the 3 businesses that are in spaces that I've got, they were doing pop-ups before and their pop-ups were successful. So I knew that they had a big following. So I knew that getting them in there, there's no way that it wasn't going to work. But once again, things can fail, but that's just business. But remember, my appetite for risk is huge. Like it's not, like I would say that to go into business, you have to have a screw loose. Like I love it. Like, I mean, I thrive, I live in stress and chaos.
I can see that.
And it's not good.
I
live on stress and chaos.
But at the same time, there's a difference between non-measured and measured stress. So the fact that you might be like, I'm going to take on this many restaurants, but you have multiple exit strategies that mitigate. Even if you're saying, I'm going to go to the edge in terms of finances, if it goes wrong, there's a plan A, B, and C.
Oh, yeah. It's calculated. But at the same time, I always tell people that I'm broke and they don't believe me. So I've got cash flow and turnover, but I'm broke because I always invest my money. Like I don't have money. I literally don't have money. And when I tell people that, they don't understand. Like I don't, and there's so many things like I want to do, But the reason why I put my money into things is so I don't do it.
Yeah.
So for instance, I would like to have a nice car. I saw your tangerine car outside. It looks very nice. It was very gleaming in the sun. You know, it was very nice. I didn't even to look where the building was. I was just driving. I said, oh, it must be there. So it's nice. But I think I've got to that point where I would say that with what the business you do, is it fair to say that generally you get your money on the back end?
Because of what I do now, I guess yes, but shorter term, because I flip properties rather than hold them and wait for them to
so your strategy kind of has changed a bit now, where it's more flip it in and out kind of thing.
So effectively, I think, we spoke about being in different positions where you're looking at effectively saying, okay, I need this level of cash flow for a standard of living. At a point in time where the assets have built up to be able to maintain that level of cash flow, can then look at being in a slightly different phase where I'm saying, okay, I'm now focusing on wealth generation as opposed to preservation, where you're just trying to keep the money you have versus actually trying to build up your working capital to go and do.
So when is it enough, Kazy? I know you've been talking. I want to talk to you now. When is it enough, Kazy, please? So, when is it enough?
So I was saying this recently and I said, like, I feel like I'm almost in terms of like cash flow, I'm at a point where the cash flow is comfortable enough that within reason, I can kind of do what I want.
Yep.
In terms of I go to the gyms that I want, I go to the holidays that I want. I don't think that, what am I going to eat out, etc. But I genuinely enjoy what I do. And I think one thing you'll find with like people that can be successful in business is that they know that saying, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And it's not strictly true, but it's a lot easier when you're going through the headache. So where I am now, I'm getting enjoyment out of if I'm walking through Brixton and because of the back of this podcast, I might say, yo, bro.
Yeah.
I saw that video of you and Gabriel. Now me and my missus just got our first place. And that still is the buzz that I'm like, oh, this is super exciting. At the point in time where I'm no longer excited what I do, I'll probably walk away and find something else that excites me. So recently I've been saying off the back of a holiday, going to Thailand, I'm saying I'm going to go and buy land in Thailand. I want to build out there. And it's for cash flow, but it's also because there's something new that I want to do.
New excitement, basically.
What about yourself?
Because I think I sit there and I say, I work in spurts. So for instance, I might work for 4 months, 5 months, and then I might not work for 6 months or for 8 months. So then I'm free. And I think I sat there the other day and I said to my friend, I said, when do we stop? Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not no millionaire, but I'm okay. I'm all right. There's not much I lack for. But when is it enough? And that's the question I ask myself, is that when does it become, like, when you monopolize something, does that become a problem? So for instance, we talk about landlords and we talk about people who own. And I always say that, is it wrong or is it bad for someone to own 50 properties? Is it wrong for someone to have 40 commercial units? Is it wrong for someone is it wrong?
I think the answer to that is, well, no is my answer. But the reason behind that is it's very easy to victimize you as, you're the bad landlord, you're the reason prices. But there is a purpose, because you were in a position to have the expertise, the ability to either have the money or borrow the funds to take a derelict property and then offer it to market that actually makes it indirectly more affordable, because the person who now rents that from you needs 3 months rent into the rent deposit. Previously, they would have needed 140k to refurbish it. So you're providing a service. Not everybody wants to do everything. Not everybody wants to be a homeowner. Not some people want to rent for convenience. So not everybody wants to own a car. There's an Uber for a reason. And I think it's, when we look at, the private rental sector, it's like 10% of the properties, I believe, are owned by private landlords. And that they obviously help for the rental demand, but it's not a massive proportion of the sector.
Of the actual, okay.
But a lot of the time, it makes really good politics. We're around election season right now. It makes really good politics to find somebody to blame for problems beyond actually blaming governments and missing targets themselves. Okay,
so I guess as much as it's a buzz and it's a thrill. So I'm into property, you're into property in different ways. As much as it's a buzz and a thrill, and I get the excitement from the renovations. I enjoy the renovations. So I enjoy getting the deal. So I get a kick out of seeing something look really bad, and then when I finish the product, that's where I get my buzz from. So as much as it makes me money, that's the thrill I get, the excitement from it. But at some point you say to yourself, let's look at someone like a Jeff Bezos, for instance, someone who's a multi-billion trillionaire, whatever you call it. at some point, someone will say that he's got too much money. It's unfair. You know, can it be unfair? Is it? Let's use Jeff Bezos. Is it unfair he has that amount of money?
Yeah, like it's unfair. But
Is it?
It's unfair on the basis that
I don't think it's unfair.
No, but it's unfair on the basis that life's unfair. It's unfair that you're a lot taller than me. That's unfair.
Okay,
but
yeah.
That's life. Like unfair is part of life. If life was completely fair, where would the excitement be?
Should there be a cap?
If we live in a capitalist society, with a cap, it deteriorates from capitalism. Because at what point, what does a cap mean? Like, who determines where the cap
let's say
should
they
be?
said, let's just say they said, for instance, that there is no reason for anyone to need more than 5 million, for instance, or a turnover of 5 million. Okay, and then they capped it and said you have to now distribute this to your employees because you've now reached your cap of 5 million. Your employees should get the rest.
It's like with anything. If you say, okay, when you make a certain amount of money, you now pay this amount more tax. People just find ways to be more efficient.
Are you against that?
What?
Against the tax threshold, where, for instance, if you're earning over, I think it's 40, like you get like 20%, then it's like 40%, then it's like 50%, or whatever the numbers are. Are you against that? Should the rich be taxed more?
Yeah, I guess to a degree they should be taxed more because, you know, there are people that need help. And if we have a society where we do have, you know, obviously a way in which those payments are, if they're effectively redistributed to help those in need, then I think that does make sense because at the end of the day, are you going to stop working because you get taxed? Because if you make, for example, if you go and make £1 million and you got to pay for like £400,000 tax on it.
Jesus Christ.
It sounds terrible. But do you want to make £100,000 and pay 20% tax on it? So if that was the other option, you make do you want 80,000 or 600,000?
Of course, you want the 600,000. Of course,
and that's it. And
I hear that, but I think the only issue I have with this is when it comes to tax and a cap is I don't believe there should be a cap because I think that stifles people's idea of creativity. Because if I know, for instance, that this is the most I can make, I stop inventing, I stop being creative.
And that's what I was going. That's exactly what I was.
Yeah, and I think there shouldn't be one. But the tax thing is a very tricky subject for me because at some point I do believe that if you're earning more, you should contribute more to society.
Yeah.
But I think at some point, when you look at all these things like capital gains tax, inheritance tax, all of these taxes, remember, it's all part of a tax.
I think what a lot of people have a problem with, they're like, look, I'm happy to contribute. I'm happy that if I'm blessed in a position where I earn more, let me pay. But it's the double and triple taxation. So you pay on your income, then you pay stamp duty to buy the property. Then if the property, you know, if you sell the property, you pay on when you sell the property, and it's like all of these double and triple, and then inheritance tax that you're paying for the same asset. I've been taxed 5 times.
Yeah.
I think that's where people do have an issue. But before I let you go, to take it back to the property side of things, with you transitioning from having the one place in Birmingham to having multiple units in very prime locations in London, outside of your attitude towards risk and your ability to use your personal credit that you've built to generate, you know, money to invest into them, what do you think enabled you to be a success in that space?
And I can't stress how important this is to be likable. I can't stress how important it is where people mention your name. And for instance, when I used to have Dulwich in Birmingham, somebody would book a restaurant somewhere else. They'd be like, what are you doing, man? Go Gabriel's, man. Someone would book a private high space. No, cancel there. Go Gabriel's. It's being likable. I can't understand how much of a currency that is. And don't get me wrong, I've worked hard. But the fact that my name holds certain weight and I'm liked. Some people don't like me. Don't get me wrong, it's not everyone who likes me. But it's being likable. I can't stress how important that is. And also network. I know they always say network is your net worth, but you're this close or this far away from someone who can change your life. And if you're not liked, they're not going to help you. Like the guy who gave me the 50 grand, he liked me. And I don't know where I would be now without that 50K. I'm not in any fantastic position.
He keeps trying to say this.
No, because I like to
double down.
Yeah, I'm not in any great position. Don't get me wrong, I like to use perspective. So I'm probably in a better position than most. But being likable, so important. Someone seeing that you can work hard, very important. There's people who I've helped out. Not that I needed to, but I can see the tenacity and I can see they're trying, you know? And it's that where the guy who helped me out saw that I was trying and he liked me. Like, be likable.
Yeah.
That's it. Just
I think that's some definitely good advice that I would say you should all stand by. Be likable.
It's so important. Be likable. Let people it's so. I don't think people understand.
It's sometimes the most simple concepts are some of the most important.
Just the circles I've got into of recent. You just said, you know what? I don't know why I reached out. I just like you.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it's definitely a good character trait to have. So for those that do now like you, how can they connect with you if they want to find out more about you and what you're up to?
Socials, Gabriel _Sion.
Cool.
That's basically where I am. I don't like to do consultancy, so I don't advertise it. So if you reach out to me and ask for it and I say no, don't take offense. It's not that I don't like you. It's just I'm very mindful of the consultancy space.
Yeah.
Very mindful of it. Very mindful.
It's murky.
And just be very careful, and I'm looking in the camera now. Be very careful of people you're handing your money over to, who you're doing mentoring or consultancy with. Be very, very mindful that you don't just throw your money away for the sake of it. And my reason why is this: a lot of information that you need is out there. And if someone's not going to give you the links, the blueprint, when I mean links, this is where I'm getting my deals from. These are my builders. This is my solicitor. This is my carpenter. What are you paying for? You might be paying for strategies, that's fine. But if someone's going to be charging you X amount of money, you should be asking for the blueprint. Don't just be paying for someone's journey. You know, here's £500 to hear how I got into property. That's nice. This is £500 how I got into business. Nice. But where are you getting these deals from, please?
Thank you. I think that's some very, very good advice. Do your due diligence if you are going to part with any money. A lot of information is out there.
I see. No. The vulnerable get picked on. And this is where I get passionate, because I've been that person, been vulnerable.
Do you know what it is as well? And I think particularly within the black and ethnic minority communities, because unfortunately we love a get rich quick scheme. So a lot of the time when you go to some of these places, you will find that, you know, it will be a lot of the minorities, the people that are desperate to make that change and get sold a dream. So I think it's definitely great advice. Do your due diligence.
Even if that's the only thing you get from this episode, as he's just said, do your due diligence. I can't stress how important it is to hold on to your money. Like, get the advice you need, get the help. But even, do you know how much I've watched this podcast? Do you know how much gems are in this podcast alone? Not this one with me. You give all the information for free anyway.
No, that's it. And that's what we always say. Like, I think the point in which you need mentorship is the point where you're topping up the 10, 20% of the stuff that you can't get for free, or the intricacies, the little details, or the contacts, or the connects and things like that are really going to take you to the next stage. But definitely do your due diligence. This has been a really great episode, something different. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, notifications on, all that good stuff. And we are going to be back next week with another guest.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Cool, man.
Thank you.